Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, May 2nd. Thank you for joining in to another live stream show here on the RAS Picks YouTube channel. Thanks to everybody listening on Apple and Spotify as well. If you're listening on X, good to have you around this morning. If you're on the YouTube side of things, the comment section is wide open the entire show. Any questions you might have, get them in the comment section. Anything you want to know about any of these teams, drop the comment as well. I've been doing a couple live streams over on the TikTok platform asking about just anything sports betting related as well. I've had a lot of fun doing those, so you can put those in on the YouTube side as well as we get through things and get going. As you can tell, nostrils a little bit clearer, throat a little bit clearer, the voice certainly going to hold up in this show. Wednesday, it was a little bit rough, but we're doing a whole lot better today. Looking forward to a show. In this episode, going to be answering questions about every single NFC team heading into the offseason. This is based off an ESPN article, which was done earlier this week. They had 32 teams, 32 questions. What's the biggest question heading into the spring and the summer offseason now that the draft is done? Lots of positional talk, a lot of player talk, a lot of things to take forward as we get into May, June, and July, the brunt of the offseason for these NFL teams. Before we get to team number one, want to remind everybody, raspicks.com/NFL. The 2025 NFL service is live. Early bird pricing is available for anybody who wants to take advantage of it. That will run for the next couple of weeks. First potential win total release expected for May 15th. So coming up in about 2 weeks. Head over to the website, raspicks.com/NFL. You can get all of the details for the service, all of the details for the early bird pricing, and everything you need to know can be found on the website. Say good morning to DJ Nick Fly. Hope you're well today. 90%. We're getting close. You know when you get sick and then you're coming out of it and it's like a week later, you're like, I'm never doing that again. I'm going to be washing my hands. I'm going to be cleaning everything a little bit extra more. I'm going to be careful. I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to be drinking water. Like I'm in that stage right now. And so it kind of gets things back. And that'll be derailed by Sunday. But at least it feels good to be coming around the corner. Weather's turning. All the golf courses are open. Still haven't been able to play in the new spot here. So hopefully over the weekend, get out, get back to normal, and continue on with how things should be after an 8-day just rough stretch, to put it lightly. Ryan Roberts back for another show. Good to see you, Ryan. Thanks for joining in the chat. As always, anybody following along, any questions you might have, drop them in the chat. NFC teams, NFL teams, comments about bets, comments about betting in general. Anything you want to know, drop it in the comment section. All right, here we go. NFC teams one by one. Biggest questions pending based on the ESPN article. Question and team number one, Dallas Cowboys. Don't they need receiver help? The answer is an overwhelming yes. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Now, what made me laugh about the ESPN article was they called a full offseason of Jonathan Mingo potential. I don't know the potential of what, but they were trying to make it a positive. I look at the depth chart for Dallas. There's a massive hole at wide receiver, which is why I'm surprised that they went Tyler Booker in the first round instead of taking Matthew Golden, who they visited with, who they had ties with. Jane Slater, day of the draft, was talking about the connection there. That's the path to me that made sense. It's clear that they wanted to draft Ted McMillan. Would have made a lot of sense playing opposite of CeeDee Lamb. Now, they're a little bit restricted on who they have for weapons opposite of CeeDee Lamb. Here is what I will say. The fact that they went Tyler Booker and the fact that they elected not to add any help at wide receiver signals to me a couple of things. One, we know Jerry Jones wants a team that can be physical and run the football. Okay. Brian Schottenheimer, the new head coach, a long history of working with teams that want to run the football. He has no issues going very run heavy in his scheme. The fact that they added multiple running backs in the free agency window kind of reinforces what this team wants to do and perhaps the identity that they want to play behind. My question is, as great as that might be, and as much as I applaud a team like Dallas for going towards an identity and building around it, I look at the Eagles' defensive line. That's going to be very hard to run against. I look at the Giants' defensive line. That's going to be very hard to run against. I look at the Commanders' defensive line, way easier than those two, but they bolstered some things at the defensive tackle spot and have some depth. I think running the football for Dallas, even with a bit of a better offensive line, this different mentality, is going to be a struggle for at least 6 of the games they play this season, if not more. I really think neglecting the wide receiver was a problem. The last thing I'll say on this, Brian Schottenheimer, labeled as a very run-first play caller. If there's any glimpse of hope, if you will, for the Cowboys, in his time with Seattle, season 1, minus 11% in pass rate over expectation. That was the anti-let Russ cook. Here comes Schottenheimer, Pete Carroll taking over. Let's run the football as much as possible. Went from a very high pass rate to the most run-heavy team. That was year 1. And I think Jerry's pushing for that. If there's a positive, by the end of Schottenheimer's time in Seattle, he was +6 in pass rate over expectation for his final season. So it took time, but do you get that now in the first season, or is he going to be kind of pushed back into run heavy to begin? I think it's a problem they didn't get a wide receiver. Jonathan Mingo is not the answer. I don't think Tolbert's the answer either. It's a problem. They're going to want to run the football. It is what it is. New York Giants, what's next for Jackson Dart and the Giants quarterback position? My answer to this is a lot of bench time, a lot of time on the sidelines, clipboard, headset. I think it's going to take an injury to Russell Wilson, and I think it's going to take an injury to Jameis Winston for Jackson Dart to see the field for the Giants. Now, when we start thinking longer term, and this is why I didn't really get the draft pick initially. The Giants have an incredibly difficult schedule this season. It's ranked 32nd in a lot of metrics. Depending how you're looking at point spreads and projections, it's going to be very difficult. The NFC East is a mess to navigate, and that does a lot to the schedule and just sets up things for the Giants very poorly. If this is another bad season for the Giants, maybe not as bad as this year, but it's another struggle. Does Brian Daboll stick around for another season, or is he going to be let go? I don't know how stable that is off of another bad season for the Giants, even with the playoff appearance a couple years ago. If that's the case, and there's a new staff coming in, and there's a projected to be anyway, pretty deep quarterback class potentially next year, do the Giants end up potentially looking at another quarterback again next year? We'll see. If that's the case, what does that look like for Jackson Dart year 2, year 3? I don't know if it gets any better. I don't think he sees the field this year, barring injury. I don't know what chain of events would have to happen for that to be the case. I don't know when we'll see Jackson Dart as a starting QB for the Giants. I don't think it's this year. And if it goes poorly and the coaching staff changes, I don't know if it's going to be next year either. I think this is a long wait for Jackson Dart to find the field. Something that's a good thing, something it's a bad. I think it's a long wait for him to see the field. Philadelphia Eagles. Will Dallas Goedert be an Eagle this season? The fact they didn't draft a tight end, lots of ties to Mason Taylor, the fact they didn't do that makes me think there's a little bit more hope than what there might have been 8 days ago going into the draft in round 1. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to sort through the contract. And what also makes this a little bit more unclear to me is for a couple of seasons in the Jalen Hurts offense, when you think about how defenses elected to defend the Eagles, if they went cover 1 and they played a lot of man coverage, A.J. Brown became the answer. If they went cover 2 and they tried to protect against the deep ball, that's where Dallas Goedert became a big weapon. And when he was on and off the field for a couple of seasons, the splits with Jalen Hurts while having these 2 wide receivers was very drastic because he was the answer and he was the big matchup chess piece that the Eagles relied on to beat some of those looks because they weren't getting it done consistently with those 2 wide receivers. Now we go back last season and see clearly when teams started to do that, Saquon Barkley became a much more effective weapon and had a massive season. And now teams are completely stuck in a bind on how they want to defend the Eagles with Barkley back there. I'm not going to say it's made Dallas Goedert redundant by any means, but it's made his importance in this offense a little bit less than it was before Barkley was installed in this offense, as Barkley's gone a long way to kind of be that answer in the same way that Goddard was when they saw certain defensive looks. So as the ask increases, the value maybe decreases slightly. That changes perspective. But the fact they didn't go and draft a tight end makes me think maybe there's a little bit of hope for him to be on the team coming this season. Last team in the NFC East, the Washington Commanders. Will the Commanders sign an edge rusher? I think they need to if they want to have double-digit wins in 2025. They need to add somebody. They did it in the draft. That was surprising to me. They ended up bolstering the middle of the defensive line, which is great. Helps them with some of the issues they had against the run. But without another pure edge rusher, I think it's a bit of a problem. John Keim thinks that Darius Smith or Von Miller could potentially be the answer. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if those two guys are going to make up for some of the issues Washington had last year pressuring the quarterback. I think when you look at the schedule that Washington's going to face this year, a lot more difficult than what they saw a season ago. And so it's not going to get any easier. They have to find ways to get pressure, whether it's going to be manufactured or not. Likely have to go that route, which leaves some things vulnerable on the back end, which was another bit of an issue for Washington last year. But I do think in the summer, they have to at least try add another edge rusher to give themselves a chance at generating a lot more pressure. That's going to be key for them this year if they want to get 10-plus wins and compete in the NFC East with the Philadelphia Eagles. Ryan Roberts is calling for DJ Moore. I'm guessing that was for the Dallas comment, Ryan, if you're saying that right. Jay Nava, good to see you back for another show as well. Crunch Time Sports Advantage Networks. What are your thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals this offseason? We will get to them in just a couple of teams. Have a lot of thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals. A very interesting team, to put it lightly. NFC North time. Chicago Bears. Have the Bears answered all of their offensive line questions? The answer is yes. They have done as much as they possibly could in the offseason and done it very quickly. Between the free agency window, between the draft, they've done as much as they possibly can to answer the questions. You have 3 new starters on the interior, potentially from the draft. You're adding another tackle spot, depending on how the 2 current tackles end up shaking down. You could potentially see a positional switch, right tackle, left tackle. You have 5 new positional starters for the Bears week 1. There is a lot of answers. There's a lot of help added. The Bears have gone a long way to do as much as they can to ensure that the offensive line up front is where it needs to be. This is what Ben Johnson and the Lions did in Detroit. It became a massive asset for the team. It took a little bit of time, but it was a great choice by them. And it's evident that that same identity is trying to be established with the Bears in Chicago. My question is this. As great as the pieces might be, how quickly is it going to come together? There's a lot of studies and a lot of history that shows that new offensive lines take a little bit of time to come together. If that is the case in Chicago, as much optimism as there might be for the Bears, not only is there going to have to be an offensive line coming together, but Caleb Williams is going to have to change his tendencies very quickly as well. Everyone should look at the Greg Cassell breakdown of how college quarterbacks that hold on to the football for a long time end up taking a lot of sacks at the pro level and never necessarily change out of those tendencies. It's a very hard thing to break. Last year, the Chicago Bears offensive line in pass blocking metrics and run blocking metrics was much better than I think they're given credit for. And part of the problem with Williams taking so many sacks and inviting so much pressure was because of how long he held on to the football for. So I don't know how necessarily to think about this going into the offseason and the early season, because part of that is certainly his tendency. And we know that that's very difficult to break and very difficult to change. But I also can't ignore the fact that he had 3 different play callers last year, and the difference between the quality of those 3 play callers and what you're getting from Ben Johnson now is massive. So this is something that Ben Johnson could absolutely scheme around and potentially develop Williams out of very quickly. We're going to see a lot more usage of Williams under center. That's going to be a big change for him as well. So there's a lot of pieces to come together here and work and get right quickly. If you're buying into the expertise of Ben Johnson scheming out the issues that Caleb Williams had, then you probably think this is going to come together very quickly. If you think that's going to take some time against the schedule that the Bears face, then you're probably a lot more pessimistic on the outlook. But I say all that to say, yes, absolutely, without question, the Bears have answered all the offensive line questions. Detroit Lions, why didn't the Lions prioritize drafting an edge rusher? This is just the Holmes-Campbell thing that they do, where they're listed to go a certain direction in the draft, and then they pull out names that nobody expected, and they go way off the board, way off of what mocks and consensuses are suggesting. And that's what we saw again this year. It's hard for me to sit here and disagree with the Lions and how they draft based on the success and the team building that we have seen the last couple of seasons during the Holmes-Campbell tenure. So I'm going to say they didn't prioritize it because they didn't think it was a priority like so many of us thought it was. And there's something else behind the scenes that we might not be privy to that made them believe it wasn't a necessity for them to go after. So that's how I look at it. And maybe that's something we see change in the summer. Perhaps they're competing with Washington to add one of those other names. But you just have to trust them at this point. They've proven they can build teams in different ways, and they've done it, and they've had a ton of success doing it. I think my biggest worry for them is replacing the brain power that was Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn in installing those players into the schemes. And if there's going to be some friction in changing over and replacing that, there's a lot of brain drain, if you will, gone from the Lions last year to this year that they're going to have to find answers for. And we'll see how that plays out. But again, it's a team that's very difficult to peg for how they draft. And it's just what they do. So they have a reason internally for why they didn't. And I'm not here to question it. Green Bay Packers, what's going on in the cornerbacks room? Now, to give ESPN a little bit of credit here, they asked this question before Albert Breer reported yesterday that there was a very likely reunion between Jair Alexander and the Packers. And he said that that was the most likely scenario. So perhaps they elected to not draft a corner until the 7th round because they knew that that was coming, despite what we heard from LaFleur and Gutekunst. But that's what I think happened, and that's how the Packers are looking at it. And if there's truth in that reporting, then you're going to have Jair Alexander back. Whether or not he can stay healthy and be on the field is another question. But that's probably why we didn't see the Packers draft or add anyone in the quarterback room. Last team in the NFC North is the Minnesota Vikings. Is J.J. McCarthy ready to take over as the starting quarterback? And the answer is yes. He's reportedly been ready since late last season to take over as the starting quarterback. In terms of, is he ready to take this offense at the same level, which it was last year with Sam Darnold? I think the answer is also yes, because if we rewind and go back to 10 months ago in the summer last year, there were questions about when does J.J. McCarthy take over? Is it week 4? Is it week 6? And then there was, of course, the injury, and that delayed a lot of progress. But before the injury occurred, there was speculation that this was a 4 to 6 week turnover period for when JJ was going to take over. Sam Darnold obviously ends up thriving for 15 games. Then he falls off in the final 2, and we have a very different opinion of things. But in terms of is JJ ready? Yes. Can he play at the same level the offense was? I think the answer is probably yes as well. And that's a byproduct of being in a Kevin O'Connell run offense and system. And there's also extra pieces added for him. Kelly added at center. Fries added on the right side of the O-line. They draft Donovan Jackson. So the O-line's better to protect J.J. McCarthy. Jones comes back. They add Mason in the backfield. All of the pieces are here for J.J. McCarthy to have success and this Vikings team to pick up where it left off with the good side of Sam Darnold last year, just because of what Kevin O'Connell was able to do from a play calling and a coaching perspective. Lots of comments coming in. Gerard Morris, good morning, by the way. Good to see you back for another show. Gerard, Seahawks are coming up. You have not missed them. You got here in time. No worries there. HTTV, have you seen the Lions road schedule? I described the Bears as hellacious. I need an adjective like a rung down from hellacious to describe the Lions. It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. HTTV, Bears run game won't nearly be good enough for the Ben Johnson offense to succeed. I don't know if I go that far. I think that's discrediting things a little bit. I think that's a little unfair. Crunch Time says Green Bay's first 3 round selections was very interesting. 2 wide receivers in the first 3 picks says a lot about what they think of their roster. Well, they certainly have a ton of speed. Last year, a lot of separation, a lot of speed, and they added more into that. Next question, or next team, that we see up as we go to the NFC South. Atlanta Falcons. Will Kirk Cousins remain in Atlanta? I don't know if it matters. The team has clearly made the shift over to Michael Penix. I don't know what Kirk Cousins is anymore as a quarterback. We talked about it last year with the Pittsburgh Steelers, if he's an option. I don't know. I think that injury may have done it for him. There was no velocity on his throws. There was no confidence at all in the plant leg. He was incredibly uncomfortable going under center, which is where he thrived a lot in his career. To put some numbers to it, with Cousins last year, and I know we're talking a very limited sample size, but Atlanta was 15th overall in offense, 17th in pass, 13th in the run. With Penix, 7th overall, 13th in the pass, number 1 rushing offense when he was back there. Derek Taylor is the play-by-play announcer for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the CFL, and he also does a lot of stats and bookkeeping. And his big thing is when you have a threat of mobility in the backfield, it really opens up a run game, especially out of shotgun. And there's obviously a lot of mobile quarterbacks in the CFL and the run game and the option game. But you think about the talent that Atlanta has in the backfield at running back. Just having Penix in there over a completely immobile Kirk Cousins, who could not move, who could not roll out, who didn't have that presence of a bootleg or being able to move off of that injured leg, and you switch him with Penix, it completely opens up the run game in a massive way. So I don't think it matters if Kirk Cousins stays. I do not think he's any longer option number 1. I think the Atlanta Falcons have clearly moved on to Michael Penix, and that's the direction that this offense is going. We're going to take a 18-second intermission here as I run to just reset something very quickly. Two shows in a row, we had to do that. It wasn't going to make it to the end with the sinuses there. So we're close. Bear with me, guys. I appreciate it. Carolina Panthers. Did the Panthers improve enough to make the playoffs? I thought they were good enough last year. And clearly, a lot of crickets, a lot of boos on that. Depends when you got it. 4.5 folks are probably pretty happy. 5.5, not so much at plus 140. But I thought there was a chance last year. Now, without trying to be biased and without trying to ride the same opinion and carry that over and kind of like downplay it and come away with it, I will say there was quite a bit that went against the Panthers last season that probably made that 5-12 look a little bit worse than it actually was. And so again, not trying to downplay it, but I'm trying to get to the answer here that the answer is probably for year 2 in a row. Like, it's probably yes, more so than it is no, that they're improving enough to make the playoffs. And I say that because last year at 5-12, think about the way that they competed and lost to the Kansas City Chiefs on the last-minute drive, the shocking loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers late, the shocking and kind of misleading final against the Eagles, which was a 6-point game, but you had 2 drives in the fourth quarter with fourth down failures on 4th and short inside the Philadelphia 30 that makes that game look very differently. You take the AFC and the NFC winners to the death in games that the Panthers very well could have won late in the fourth quarter, and against the Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers, the best team in the division, you squander that game. Like 5-12 for the Panthers, 7-10, 8-9, probably a little bit more fair of a representation for how that could have played out when you think about a lot of those close calls. I know they had some games that obviously went their way late and won scores, but just the trajectory of that season with all the problems early, first 8 weeks of the season, they could barely complete a pass. And the bet really was on Dave Canales and Brad Idzik developing Bryce Young, developing that offense. And we saw what it could look like late in the year when things started to click and guys got comfortable. And by the way, when you look at this, the Carolina Panthers, when it comes to points lost to injury and points lost to IR placements, the Carolina Panthers defense had the second most in both of those categories. So a ton of injuries on the defense. I say all of that to say this. Do I think that they're in that same category as I was optimistic about them last year? Yes. Sentiment, price, projections, everything have definitely changed for them again this year, which kind of makes it difficult to repeat that. But if the defense is healthier, which you would certainly hope luck-wise it is going to be, the way that they added pieces on defense in the draft and free agency, which I'm not incredibly high on, but I read other reports and reviews, and guys are raving about some of these additions for the Panthers on defense. And if you think Ted McMillan is a wide receiver day one in this offense, which I do more so than I believe in some of the defensive additions, they improved a lot here. So some luck metrics, some injury luck, some additions in free agency, some additions in the draft. I think there's a lot of positives here for Carolina, second year in a row. New Orleans Saints. Who is the Saints starting quarterback in September? Tyler Shuck, is my opinion. The Derek Carr injury, how he's speaking in churches, he's on YouTube live streams, how that was reported from his side and not from the Saints side makes me question, like, is he even still with the team at all? Like, what does that relationship look like? It seems awfully fractured. To me, if this was the staff from last year carrying over again, they probably stick with Rattler, or they maybe see Hayner a little bit more, but it's a new coaching staff. I think they go with the guy that they picked in the draft high. I think they trust his maturity for how old he is, how many starts they got to just come in, and they look at it to say, hey, if he succeeds, we picked him. We win from that. If he doesn't, well, Nussmeier, the new offensive coordinator, has his son as a quarterback who's going to be up there in the draft next year. We can take a shot on him if Manning doesn't declare. So we have a connection there if things don't go well, and we're kind of, I don't want to say tanking, but if Shuck doesn't work out, it's kind of a win-win for the team and the staff. So I don't know why they go back to guys they didn't bring with them. And to me, that's how I get to the conclusion that Tyler Shuck is probably going to be the guy. Now, Nick Underhill yesterday implied he thinks similar, so I certainly agree with that. I think that's the direction that the Saints go, and that's who's going to be starting week 1 for New Orleans. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Did the Bucs do enough to address their needs on defense? Interesting question that I would say I had more trouble answering than almost any of these that were asked about other teams. So I would say the answer could be yes, but I would also say that comes with a bit of a caveat that for the first time in Todd Bowles' tenure with the Buccaneers, the level of play that is needed from the defense for this team to be successful is probably the lowest bar that it's ever been, because this offense is absolutely loaded. If Emeka Egbuka turns into any high percentage of what he's touted to be as a wide receiver coming into this offense, last year the Bucs had no issues moving the football, and they dealt with injuries to Evans. They dealt with injuries to Godwin. They dealt with integrating McMillan, the rookie, into the system. If you get those first two names back at 100%, and you have all of a sudden McMillan into year two, and now you add in another weapon, and you have Bucky Irving, who now has rightfully earned that number one spot and isn't playing from a snap share deficit. This offense is just loaded for Tampa Bay. So do the Buccaneers still have an issue, perhaps pressure? I think that's a fair question. Last year, they had a lot of trouble turning their second highest blitz rate into sacks. They rated 18th in that regard, which is unusual for a Todd Bowles defense. I thought the big issue last year, too, in the secondary, they had a lot of holes. Part of that was driven by injury, but they go and add pieces there, and they add some in the free agency window as well. So to me, I think they did a sufficient job. And when it's looked at in a big picture with the offense contributing, I think they're in a pretty good spot roster-wise. So I don't have too many concerns about the Bucs, even though you probably would have liked to see more help added in terms of getting after the quarterback. But just shoring up the secondary, I think, was a good move by them overall. That Rebel Dog, I don't think Manning will declare. I get the feeling no as well. I saw somewhere where they want to, it came from the family, I think. They said they wanted 25 starts for him in college. So it could be another season after this one as well. So that's probably the right take on that one as well. Moving over to the NFC West, Arizona. Will the offense have enough firepower to make a significant jump? I think firepower is the wrong word used by ESPN. This is a misunderstanding, in my opinion, of the identity of this offense. I don't think Arizona wants nor needs to be what they were with Kingsbury. And that's like a dumb, blunt comment. But to me, there's a view of the Arizona Cardinals offense that it's up-tempo, spread, taking deep shots downfield. That's not it at all. This is a very physical offense that wants to run the football, lead on heavy personnel. Their usage of 2 and 3 tight end sets was very high last year. This is a team that wants to be physical and grind down defenses to set up chances to be explosive. So firepower is the wrong word. Do they have enough pieces? I think the answer is yes, with the one concern being, what are they going to do at right tackle? They have to figure out the solution at right tackle. Last year, injuries plagued them on the offensive line and really hurt the identity of this team. That's an issue that they need to figure out and shore up over the spring, over the summer, and get to a point where they can be comfortable. And that is going to go a long way to sorting out the offense, to stabilizing things, because the defense for Arizona this year was going to be significantly improved from what it was last year. And that's going to contribute and help with the style that they want to play. This is a team that's going to score a lot of points, but they're going to do it in a way that I think is different from just the general perception of an offense that has Kyler Murray in it. This is going to be a very physical offense again for another year. And I think they certainly have the weapons and pieces to do it if they solve the right side of the offensive line. LA Rams. Well, the Rams not adding to the secondary after drafting. I'm Ron Burgundy. Look at this. Who wrote this? The editor here needs to be fired. Will the Rams add to the secondary after not drafting a cornerback? That was a miss on the read. It was a miss on the type. It was a miss on the question. Are the Rams going to add more corners is the question that's being asked. Everything's pointing to a reunion with Jalen Ramsey for this team. That's what's being reported. That's what's being discussed. That's how things are falling out. That's how it looks like it is going to happen. So will the Rams add to the secondary? I think the answer is yes. I think they find a way to make it work with Jalen Ramsey. As it stands right now on May 2nd, that's what it looks like is going to happen. So yes, as I absolutely stumble through reading 12 words on the screen in front of me. San Francisco, what happens with Brock Purdy's contract? The number is $55 million, as reported lately. There is still a very large gap, apparently, between the team and Purdy. I don't know how it plays out. I will say if the 49ers, who for so many seasons just have these little issues that hang up contract-wise that seem like things they can settle, just find a way to get it done. Like, you have to find a way to get this done. Is $55 million an overpay for Purdy? Potentially. But, I mean, he's being talked about internally from the team like he's a top 12 guy in the league. That's what you're going to have to end up paying him. So, find a way to make it happen. I don't know how it plays out, but if you're the 49ers and you let this drag on into camp and you upset things the way that the offseason's already been going, have to find a way to make this work. Seattle Seahawks. Have the Seahawks improved their offensive line enough? This is a fun one to answer. So the only real notable add for Seattle was Gray Zabel in the draft on the interior. On paper, this is the second worst offensive line coming into the season. Here's what's interesting about this to me. If you're just asking this question, did they add enough? The answer is no. But if we're thinking about the scheme and we're thinking about Click Kubiak, the answer is potentially yes. Last year, the New Orleans Saints were talked about in the exact same manner and the exact same way as we are talking about Seattle right now. And if you remember, the Saints drafted a left tackle who got moved to right tackle, and they ended up switching the right tackle to left tackle. They had a guy retire. It was a mess. Every Saints preview, every Saints discussion was, how is this offense going to work? They don't have an offensive line. They want to run the football. Like, what's the answer? Weeks 1, 2, 3, the Saints come out and just absolutely destroy defenses. And everyone's looking at this offensive line, pushing teams down the field, saying, where in the world did this come from? That is what has happened for 25 years with Kubiak and Shanahan offenses. Not just with these two, but with their dads as well, dating back to the late 1990s. These offensive schemes find ways to mitigate concerns and lack of talent on offensive lines to produce acceptable offenses. So on paper, did they add enough? No. For the scheme, did they add enough? Potentially. The underlying blow everything up factor in this entire question is Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is incredibly sensitive to pressure. The Seattle Seahawks last year had a very bad offensive line, but they had Geno Smith, who's a magician at moving around in the pocket when facing quick pressure to extend the play and get the ball out. They don't have that anymore. Derek Carr with the Saints was incredibly effective at very short dropbacks, getting the ball out quickly. That's not what Sam Darnold tends to thrive in at the same level of quickness. Sam Darnold is very good when in rhythm, dropping back, getting it out to a designed first or second read. The more he has to hold on to the ball, the more he has to extend plays outside of some big highlight plays that might stick in your mind in Minnesota. For his career, that's been a big problem. If that same level of quick pressure against the Seahawks offensive line plagues them like it did last year, and you replace Geno Smith with Sam Darnold, that's going to be a far worse result for this offense than what it was last year. So there's a lot that needs to be done here from scheme, from adjustment, and there's a big uncertainty factor with Sam Darnold in this offense relative to what it was last year that makes me tend to believe the answer is no more than yes. But there's a lot of history that says these schemes can overcome very limited additions to the offensive line in the offseason. So it's very clear what is going to make a good or bad offense for Seattle, and that's really going to be how effective can this scheme be at, in a way, protecting, but also playing around some of the limitations that Darnold is going to bring that Geno did not. Gerard might be squirming in the chair a little bit. We're hearing that response. We'll see. Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network says neither Eli or Peyton declared with more starts under their belt than what Arch will have at the end of this season. Peyton played 4 straight years, or he played 3 years, same as Eli. He graduated early. That goes back to my early teens and preteen years where, off the top of my head, I don't have those exact start numbers. I honestly, I wish I remember where I heard that said specifically. There was something that came out where the number was 25 starts for him before he goes to the NFL. It might have been Cowherd or Eisen in an interview. I don't remember exactly, but it's probably something that can be found somewhere online that can be brought up very quickly. Tribe says Puka and Devontae Adams. Good luck stopping that. That's going to be a very fun offense to look at. The way that Adams is still able to separate off the line of scrimmage and get open quickly, that's going to be a nice fit in there for sure. All right, that will do it for me today. I hope everybody has an awesome Friday. I hope you have a great first weekend in May. Some awesome weather everywhere for a lot of folks. So that's going to be a great weekend for many to kick off what feels like the first weekend of early summer, late spring. In a lot of parts around the world. So I hope you enjoy it. Hope you enjoy the NHL and the NBA playoffs. A lot of exciting games as well. I will be back bright and early Monday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, with another show as we start to get into a little bit more preview talk. Looking forward to teams heading into the schedule release, which is now just 12 days away. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll chat to you again soon.